So hi everyone, welcome to this week's Power Platform User Group Stuttgart session. As always, I want to inform you that the meeting is being recorded. So if you don't consent to being recorded, your voice, video, or everything in the chat, feel free to just watch the recording later. You can see the platforms that we use to share our recording later on. I'll put the links in the chat as well, so you have them right at hand. Just give me a second. Okay, that's a little bit big. Just give me a second and I'll paste it there. And yeah, we are presenting every week, or the goal of this call is to do a weekly call where people get the chance to talk about the topics that they love and like regarding BI, and we have amazing speakers each week. We is Augustine and me, Christian. You can see we're both on LinkedIn. Twitter is Augustine's Twitter as well. So just feel free to connect, send a request, or if there's anything that you would want to see in some of the upcoming sessions, just feel free to reach out. Augustine has another kind of format which he has on Tuesdays, Data Jazz. It's a little bit different than the call that we're doing here. It's more of an open conversation. The next one is, I think that should be next week. Next week with Jürgen ten Hert, and yeah, feel free to check that out as well. It's definitely worth your while, and I think you're gonna like it. As for the upcoming sessions next week, we have Pedro Reis with Power BI Goals, Ultimate Piece for Top Management, and then 2 weeks after, Ben Ferry with an introduction to bespoke visualizations. And with that, I stop my part and just hand it over to today's speaker. James, welcome. Thanks for being here. Yeah, the stage is yours to talk about the dynamically converted exchange rates. Oh, you're on mute.
That's a classic mistake, isn't it? My Teams is having a moment. There we go. Just uploading my PowerPoint. So yeah, we're going to talk about dynamically converting exchange rates. So it's a scenario I've come across a few times where you get a load of data and it is in one or many currencies and you want it to be in a different currency. And there's different ways of doing that. The original overview for this presentation included SQL. We're not actually going to cover SQL today because I just wanted to make the demo as easy as possible, and also I'm going to share the Power BI file at the end, so it's entirely included within that file. So you can have a look what's been done, replicate it yourself, and hopefully just hot swap out your data, which should just make this easier because the more people who can do it, the better. We can all do cool new stuff. So we're going to go. So this is probably going to be Power Query and DAX, and we're going to convert at the currency that was the rate that was applicable on the day of a transaction. So in this pretend scenario, and I will say if this bears any resemblance to any real data, it's completely unintentional. It's fake data. Yeah, don't be shocked by any of my clients. It's definitely no one's data. It's completely fake. And we're going to show converting at the date of a transaction, and we'll also show if we wanted to compare for today. So if you think about different scenarios, if you are looking at money in the bank, so you've got 3 bank accounts, euros, US dollars, and pounds, the rate you're probably interested in is, well, if I withdraw all that out to the central bank account today, and that's in pounds, what would I get today? So then you would look at today's rate. Whereas if you're interested in comparing year-on-year performance and trying to take exchange rate out of the equation, then you would compare at the time. So a sale in January versus a sale in May. If we allow for exchange rate fluctuations, what's that actually worth to the business? Or what was it worth to the business in the business rate, which is GBP in this example? So there's three things we're going to do. So we're going to convert values from one currency to another. It doesn't have to be pound to euro, it could be euro to pound. It'll handle both. We're going to provide an easy way for the user to be able to just select, I want to see it in pounds, I want to see it in dollars, I want to see it in euros. We're only doing those three currencies today for simplicity. You can expand this up to as many currencies as you actually want to do. And then we're going to take it a little bit further and actually format it appropriately, because people might, on a euro, they might want the euro symbol to appear on the far right, the far left. I've never known which one's correct, because different people want different things. But also, Shanghai, Singapore dollars, you'd have an S. So it's all completely customizable. You can choose what you want rather than just having numbers. You could even, if you wanted to, if you use commas as decimal places, use them for the opposite reason to what we do in Britain. You should be able to do that as well. I've not tested that, but you should be able to do that as well. So just to say, I'm going to introduce me, and it's not actually just me, it's me and my colleague Chris. So we form a company called DataQuality Limited, and we engage with clients across all sectors, finance, retail, everyone. You'll see that on the next slide who we work with. And we both actually work for volunteer for a charity called, can people not see the presentation? Because I can see comments saying,
I can see it. I guess if there's anything or any one of you who can't see it, try to rejoin.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we are DataQuality Limited, and we work across a variety of sectors. We're in a charity. It's called Chester Grosvenor Roundtable, because Roundtable is the bigger international charity. Our particular area is called Chester Grosvenor 76, which is why if you look at the picture with Chris just there, that's me in the rabbit. We were giving away Easter eggs for Easter, obviously. So we gave away 150 Easter eggs that day, just as a, give back to the community kind of thing. The people we've worked through throughout the years are on screen. As I say, they go from management consultancies to getting events. I find data is data. We have different domains and you have different specialisms, but the practice of taking data from raw to presentation grade, it's a similar thing across all industries. So using Matthew Roche's maxim, data should be transformed as far upstream as possible, as far downstream as necessary. What I would do in a production scenario is some of the stuff you're going to see in Power Query, I would actually do in SQL. And the reason for that is just being conscious your client might not only want to use Power BI, use this data in Power BI. They may want to use it Excel, Tabular, ClickView, whoever. So if the further up or back in the layers you make the transformation, the more useful it is to people. So I am only showing it in Query because it makes for an easy demo and something that I can pack in and give to people. So here's a demo. Let's get on with it. I'm aware today is May the 7th. So this is my one Star Wars thing because I don't really know Star Wars. There you go. I'll take you to Java now. May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. And I'm now going to show you the actual Power BI. Just a second while I switch screens and get that going. And here we go. Do the obligatory check that you can all see my screen.
Yeah, it's visible.
Cool. So, and I'm gonna when I send I'll make the PowerPoint available. There's a lot of references where I've borrowed from people's resources online. So I'm not doing that without giving them credit for where it came from. So you'll see that as I go through. So a typical scenario, this is probably the first report you might come up with, and it's just really high level. All the sales that have happened within a particular year. In this demo data set, I just went for 2020, and it's split by who made that sale, some arbitrary imaginary employee, and we're just showing how much money is attributable to each one of those people. But we have a little bit of a problem, and that problem is the invoices are in different currencies. So if you look towards the bottom here, you can see there's £150,000 was done in pounds, and 87,000 was done in euros, and 34,000 in dollars. Now, Power BI doesn't really care or know about that. It's just going to add them up. So a figure of 269,597, that's not a real number. You can't add currencies up like that. So just as an initial step, so this is the base currency, and just to show what we're going to do today is we will convert from the base to the target, and we'll format it appropriately. So you have pounds, euros, dollars, and this is all dynamic. This is not, if you look, the only filter affecting these things is the target currency, so that you can see them as a 3. So I'm going to switch over to this. So typical scenario, the kind of data you get, this transaction occurred on this date, it was in this currency, this is the amount, and this is who did it. I think, yeah, I've just brought these in as entered data, so that it's portable, and then formatted things appropriately. So there's nothing magic going on here really. And this is the rates data I'm imagining we were given, which is per end of month. We have an exchange only from GBP, sorry, euro and US dollar into GBP, and also GBP into GBP, but it's a 1-to-1 exchange rate. So pretty typical. You've got that kind of source data. So we're just going to clean up the data types first, make that. If anyone knows how to go from string to date without going through date time first, please send it out. I've looked for it, but I've not spent all that much time on it, but it's something that annoys me that it's 2 steps when it could be 1. And I've just made a note that at this point we are 1 row per currency per month. So just do some renaming. This is an interesting bit. We're going to join. So this is obviously 1 row per month. We're going to join this table to the date table, which is 1 row per day. It's got various other columns. If we look, I've credited, if Radicad did the all-in-one script, I've taken parts from that, and then Super BI, they proposed a different date format, so you can work with charts more easily. I wanted people to be aware of those, so they're included here. I think that'll be quite useful to you. Yeah, so here's the rates. We're going to join on that by the exchange date here is going to the invoice date there, and we're going to expand that, because what you can actually get is the start of month from that column, so from that data source, and the end of month. So we've gone a little bit further. We now know. So that's the other thing to know, actually. These dates are not the last day of the month. They're 1 day prior. That doesn't matter. It can be any day within a month. It could be the first of the month, last of the month, or any day. This process will still work. So yeah, so now we have the start of month and end of month, and we're going to generate a list, which is create a list of every day between that day and that day. Now, if I clicked into that, you would just see, I can actually do that. Let me duplicate it. So I'm going to show you the list. So just click on the list. And it is just literally a list of numbers. You'll see it if you're familiar with Excel. It's a number since 1900. I think it's a number of days since 1900, or is it 1970? Can't remember. It's but it's a number of days since a date. But that, hopefully, if you're used to Excel, you're familiar with converting that to an actual date. Let's go back here. We've got this list. Now we're actually going to expand that list, and what that does is it pivots around. So if you look at that, we now have, instead of one row, so at this point we had one row per currency per month. As soon as we expand, we've now got one row per currency per day in the month. So we've changed the granularity, so it makes our DAX syntax much simpler, is that we can just connect day to day. So it's not essential, you can get around it in DAX, but again, looking at the Matthew Roche max in, move complexity as far up as you can, because you can just make more use of it. That's my take of it. So, and then we have the end result is a table with every day of the year. It's going from euros, well, a base currency to a target currency, and the exchange rate that applied. So you can see, because this started off as a month, it's got one exchange rate for the whole month. And then this is a different currency, so this is US dollars. And then it'll move on to the next month, etc. So not a massive table. What you then need, because this is only giving you from US dollar, euro, and pound to pound. So, like I say, it's quite a similar scenario. So I duplicated that data set and just went a little bit further. So that I filtered on only showing where the base currency is euros. Look. And then I added a new column, which is 1 over that rate, so inverting the currency exchange. And we then rename it. So what was euro gets renamed as GBP, I think, and what was GBP gets renamed as euro. And then set the data types again, just for completeness. This is exactly the same as that one, apart from instead of changing from GBP to euro, it's GBP to US dollars. What we then do is stack those three tables on top of each other. So you have a single table now with euro to GBP, euro to US dollars, euro to euro, as well as US dollar to the 3 and GBP to this 3. So there's 9 combinations all contained within this data set. So that I'd say that's a typical scenario where you have a piece of data and you need to manipulate it to fit the your needs. So there's a few steps here you go through to do that, but you end up with a good result. I wanted to show you an alternative, is if you don't have access to exchange rates on a day. So for in this example, we only had it once per month, but if we wanted it to be per day, there are resources online, and there's credit there as to how to do this. But this API.exchange rate you can download from any currency to any currency. There's 280, I think, last time I looked, and so it just gives you this per day. It gives you a record, and that record contains the exchange rate. So this is a GBP base. So to get to GBP from these currencies, this is the value. So you times your value by, if you can hear my dog, you times, and then you end up with converted value. But it's a similar thing. I've got a load of GBP rates, euro rates, US dollars, and then stacked them on top of each other. So now you have a very similar table, whereas the first one is month-end rates. The second one is daily rates. So a rate per day per currency that we're interested in. For the sake of the end user being able to select a currency they want to convert into. I've just made a reference to the currency exchange table, removed all the other columns apart from target currency, and then deduped. So that's dynamic. So if you were to go through and add extra, or even to change the currencies that are in here, you don't need to do anything with this. It will just cope with the change. And finally, also from web rates. Now, the reason I included all of these is they're really useful for the APIs where you get this data from, because I've tried over the years to find different APIs that give you readily access to the exchange rates, and it's quite a struggle. So these two are really good for your historic rates and your live rates. Are two different sources. So this one comes from a really well-known exchange rate website, which is xe.com. We do the same thing, one for GBP, one for USD, one for Euro. I quite like using patterns because it's repeatable and people understand. Once you understand what's happening there, you kind of automatically understand what's happening under web rates and web rates live. And in your usage scenario, you might only want one, or you might only want historic. See the Fernando has asked what's your source for exchange rate. So this actually it's included in the presentation I'm going to send over, but XE is for live, and API.exchange rate is for the historic. They're both free. I think you do up to 1,000 requests on the historic. I'm not sure of the limit on live. And in terms of it being slow, it's near instant. I think it takes about 5 seconds. So I'll send those over. Hopefully they'll be of use to you. And then another little thing I've done is a measure table. I'm not sure if you lot of any of you have trying to avoid try to avoid the term guys because it's not acceptable anymore. So you lot sounds a bit weird. So if you've used a measures table before, cool. If not, this is the way I do it. There is another way of doing it, which is directly in DAX. But essentially, you just create an empty table. All we've done is created a table which contains a blank value and called it X, because we're going to hide that in a minute. So that's all of Power Query. There's nothing else to show there. So let's move on to the Power BI side of things, well, the DAX side of things. And I'll show you in terms of the model, we've got invoices being the main fact table, I guess you call it, but this isn't dimensionally modeled. Saying Chris's idea is just call everyone dude. Yep, definitely. So everyone's a dude, that's fine. Yeah, measure equals blank, Fernando, that's exactly. If you were doing it in DAX, that's the way you do it. Right, yeah, so the modeling, invoices table is the main table, and we're just linking off to employees and invoice date, which is interesting because actually we do use invoice date to do the conversion, but we do it in DAX, so it's not actually connected. So disconnected tables. And over here you can see the measure table looks slightly different. It's got a calculator on it. I use an underscore because it puts it right to the top. So it can be quite useful for if you're handing over the data set or getting end users to connect to a data set, try and make it as user friendly as possible. So a lot of these tables are hidden. They're not going to need to use them. And if there is a measure you want people using, create it explicitly. Another reason to do that, if you were connecting to this, if you were doing this in analysis services rather than Power BI, the explicit measure can be used in Excel, and the implicit can't. So it's worth knowing that restriction. So that's, again, put it as far upstream as you can. And I've just organised things into folders to walk through. I'm just seeing invoice data table is your calendar table, right? Yes, it is. invoice date. Yeah, and that was generated from the Radicad script. So there we go. Just to show you, so you've seen the currency data, the employee data is like that. It's quite straightforward. The date again is quite straightforward. Another little tip to show you is this column is actually a date column, but it's a fiscal year. It's actually a date column. But they applied the formatting of /f/y, y. One of the benefits of doing that is when you stick it in a chart, you don't need to tell it to order by something else, because it's still a date. It's just being displayed as that. And that's a trick you can use in lots of places. The same, not same for that. So month it is text, so we have to actually tell it that it's sorted by the month number. Otherwise, when you drop it onto a chart, it will just go in alphabetical order, which can trick you and be frustrating to figure out what's going on. Okay, so first attempt, we are going to just convert it straight to pounds. So this is the DAX we've got. We are just summing the invoice's net amount and looking up the value in the live web rates. At the moment, it's hard coded to GBP because first attempt. We want to convert from connected the base currencies, so that's your join, and we want to convert at the GBP rate and bring back the answer. So because it's hard coded to GBP, I formatted it as pounds. And you can see there it's in use. Now, interestingly, it puts the pounds here as well, because I'm using the same measure all the way through. I would argue that's not best practice, and I'll show you why in a second. But now at least the numbers are making sense. You can add these things up, and that 248,837, that's a real value. That is in pounds. That's okay to use. So. And also just wanted, because I've just thought of it, when you get this Power BI file, you can see the slices I've put in. So it's just a nice user experience where you click everyone's used to that button being something you click. So the user kind of already instinctively knows how to use this. Opens up, they can choose to slice by whatever they want to slice by, and then just close it. Oops. In service, you wouldn't have this issue. There we go. So it's just bookmarks to move back and forward. Okay. So the next step, we're going to go to our dynamic. So we've now got a slicer, which is using that distinct list of currencies we set up earlier. So if you choose to show it in GBP, it shows GBP. If you choose to show it in euro, you see all the way through, the values change. It's now showing in euros, and same for US dollars. I've actually got it defaulted that this is set that you can only make one selection, but just in case if you were using it in some other way, maybe you use a chart with a pie chart with the currencies. I don't want people to be able to select more than one because the numbers won't make sense. So it defaults to GBP. So if you make no selection, it's GBP. If you select more than one, it's still GBP. It's a default. You can make that default whatever you want, whatever's appropriate for the country you do the most work for. Yeah, so you can see that it is changing dynamically, but it's just numbers. There's no formats. So, did I think I've hidden these? Bear with me a second. I'll bring them back. Yep, I've hidden them. The hiding things is very simple, as you can see. So I've now just unhidden these two. But yeah, so you can now see the DAX for the dynamically converting depending on what's been chosen. So it's very similar. If you look at the this one, it's just that we've hard coded this value here. So to take it to the next level and have it dynamically converting, all we need to do is you don't have to do it in a variable. I just find DAX much cleaner and easier to work with if you do. So we just find out what has been selected, and if nothing's been selected or more than one value, then default to GBP. And then the only difference between this set of code and the previous one is the hard-coded GBP has now been set to that variable. Other than that, it's exactly the same. So it's nice and easy to maintain, and it's easy to get to the next level. If you're already at one place, you just need to tweak it and get to the next level. And then I'm going to take it to another level again. And this is where if you swap between pounds and euros, again, you'll see the values change, but now it's formatted. You've got the currency symbol, which if this is printed out, as an example, people just inherently understand it's a euro. They don't need to look over to the side to see what it is. Maybe someone exports just this. Because it's base currency, it doesn't tell you what the target currency is. It gives people a clue by having the format in there ready. There we go. But what I don't do, so within this table, I actually use the unformatted version, particularly because when you get to this size, you're kind of running short on space, and 76 million. Knowing it's 76 million euro versus 76 million pounds, I think is of less value because you can see that anyway with it being, and hopefully the user, once they're used to using this report, but it's no need to take up that extra space. This may not be the best example, but if you had a lot more going on your report, you would like coming down here, you're really short space. Do you really need the currency symbol? It's a matter of opinion. I'm open to be convinced otherwise. And this is just showing you the comparison of the numbers. So if you were to convert, well, actually I'll show you that. So to convert at the invoice date, on the day of the invoice itself. Thank you, Fernando. I will cover that. I think I've skipped it. So again, it's all about building on what you already know. So we've got give me this rate where the currencies match and the target is the selected currency. All we need to do is take it to the next level and say, actually, instead of looking at the web rates live, which obviously doesn't have any dates in it, I want you to look at the currency exchange table that we built and show me the rate where the date matches the invoice date. And what I like about this pattern is it's completely interchangeable. So these two, the only difference between these two is the table you're looking at. So one has month-end rates, one has the day-end rates. Other than that, the formula is exactly the same. So you're not trying to remember all the different convoluted ways. You build up from this, or more specifically this. So Fernando asked about how did you format the values, which I did forget to cover. So this is where we generated the value. So I want you to convert to the current rate there, but in terms of formatting it, you just reference the first measure and you have a switch. So I want you to format that value, and if you have chosen GBP, again, if they haven't, it's just a fail-safe. If no choice is made, revert to GBP, just so you don't get weird data. But yeah, so assuming they've chosen US dollars, format it this way, GBP this way, euro this way. So why don't we the ability to do this. I said it might be possible. Let's have a look. Yeah, don't have a look at that. That didn't work. Okay, there may be ways of doing it. It's not one tried before, but absolutely what you can do if you prefer to have your currency symbol at the end. Not tested it. Testing things on a live demo is never a bad idea, is it? There you go. Yeah, it works. So, and again, you probably recognise this format again from Excel. If you're formatting a value in Excel and you go into the custom formatting, it's the same or very similar syntax. That rather rapidly, given we have an hour and a half, is the end of my presentation. Is there anything that anybody wants to go over? Maybe custom format for display alone is the trick. I think with the currency and in terms of flipping the commas and the decimal point, I think it might be more involved because it'll be down towards the, especially in desktop, the regional settings will come into play. So, and yes, I agree. One caveat with this approach is that it's not a value anymore; it's text. Yeah, so this actually converts the value to text, which is fine for visuals like this. But if you wanted to do something which aggregated, it wouldn't work. Just seeing you typing. I'm not sure. I'd say I'll share this file out and everyone can have a play. And if you do find a way of doing what you want to do, share it. It's, you know, the community. The more we share, the better we all get. There's a phrase: the rising tide, or rising water level. Everyone rises at the same time. I've massacred that, but you get the idea. Just going through the comments. I think
you can also unmute yourselves if you're done with the presentation. If there's a question, that should be possible.
Yeah. Who's going to be brave to be the first person speaking? Chris has got his hand up. Chris, do you want to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yep, can now.
It was just about Power BI, really, in general. Like, is it free to use commercially as like a freemium thing, or is it always paid for?
So you completely free. You can use Power BI Desktop. You can do. You're not limited in what you can do at all. You can upload it to the service. The service being the web interface for Power BI, but you can't share it. Essentially, you can share a Power BI file, so you could send that file to somebody else. If the data was self-contained, like it is in this one, everything would be fine. If it was linking to data sources, say it was on a SQL database or it was on Azure storage, you do run the risk of well. If you're not set up correctly, then if you've got it set up so it uses the person who opened the file's credentials and they haven't got access, then it's not going to work. If you set it up to where the credentials are kept within the Power BI file, that's not a good idea either for security reasons. So I'd say really it's completely free to use for yourself. So if you wanted to look at your own Google hit rate, you can download. So in terms of getting data, Power BI is absolutely phenomenal. You can get it from so many places. So I mentioned Google then. So look.
I was going to say, how does it compare to Google Data Studio? Is it?
Google Data Studio is obviously, when it comes to consuming Google data, far more integrated. In terms of being able to connect to a variety of data sources, it can do. I haven't checked lately, but last time I checked, it was much more Power BI. Yeah, so then I'll just, and very quick, because the licensing is complex and layered. There's a pro license. That means you can then share, you can upload to dedicated workspaces, which you can let other people log in and see. But they also need pro licenses. But they're cheap. They're £9.50 a month, I think. And if you've got an Enterprise 5 license, it's a Microsoft Enterprise 5 license. It's included anyway, so no cost. And then there's additional. We can get pro features. In terms of what you can connect to and download, they're the same across all. What changes is with Premium, you have a dedicated resource for your Power BI tenant. Whereas normal Power BI, and this is my understanding of it, you're in a shared pool basically. So you just have to deal with it being a bit slower. So yeah, and then there's additional features with doing continuous integration. Refresh rates is something that changes. So I think you can refresh a data source in the service 8 times a day if you're free or pro. 48 times a day if you're premium or premium per user. Yeah, it's a complicated topic.
Yeah, it's all in the documentation. And
yeah, Microsoft's documentation on Power BI is actually quite good. And they do regular blog posts. The change cadence is amazing. There's a release every month of new things, and they have interfaces where you can say, look, I really want to do this, and it all gets, if people vote on it and it's a very popular thing, it gets done. So it's a really it's an amazing product in terms of, it's not just here's a product, see you later. It's changing all the time, and it's guided by the end users as to what they want. I'd say Power BI is the best. I agree with the last comment. My first company I set up was called Power BI Limited. I saw Power BI being the tool a while back. I jumped before the product itself was as developed as it is now, and before the market was ready to take it on, because it was quite a new tool at the time. But the community is you can see that you mentioned Google Analytics. There are tutorials online and resources online where people have done that, and all you have to do is hook up your credentials. And they've already mapped out different visuals, and for other things. And there's online competitions where there's monthly competitions. I think that's the most frequent I know of, where you get given a data set and you can just crack on, see what you can do. And everyone shares. Oh, this is what I did. And so a lot of these ideas I've shown here, like in terms of the slicer, I didn't come up with them. They're shared from other people because the community is so cool. They don't just hold it to themselves. It's very much, I've done a cool thing. Look, have it, share it, which is amazing. So, sorry, I ramble on. I do like Power BI. Anybody else? Questions? Oh, so it was mentioned if your company is okay with publishing to the web, it's free on the service as well. Yes, you can. So, and there's ways of doing that securely. There is a Power BI meetup tomorrow on that very subject, actually, where in the past you could expose your Power BI desktop report or your Power BI report to a web URL. And anyone with that web URL could access the report. Unfortunately, if you knew enough Google foo, you could search for these publicly available reports. It was quite funny to do that search with the added search term of confidential or proprietary or something like that. And the amount of people who shared data semi-unknowingly to the cloud was huge. It was 20, 30,000 results. So people generally have learned not to do that. If you've got any data which is confidential, don't recommend doing it. You can actually turn it off in the admin features. You can turn it off and say, look, I don't want people doing that. How do you search one shared to web? I'm going to take the same line that the rest of the community I've seen do, which is I'm not sharing that because there's still confidential stuff out there. But if you look around, Google it, funny enough, or Reddit, there are ways of doing it. But I don't want to be the one who tells you where all the confidential data is. That's not. I'm trying not to get on that on my CV. What else? Anybody else? Okay. I don't want to go into that meetup tomorrow. I'm going because I'm interested to know how we can share things. I know of a client actually shares everything through their through an intranet. So I guess it's secured in that you can only get to it if you're behind the firewall, behind the curtain anyway. That's one way of securing it, I guess. But yeah. Also, I'm not going to discuss ways of getting around Microsoft licensing. That's another thing which wouldn't be a good thing to do. I see a few people typing. And through SharePoint, yeah, you can share it through SharePoint. Actually, in terms of SharePoint, my wife was doing something the other day, which is it just amazed me how simple it was. A SharePoint list for something she was doing in work, and the ability to click 2 clicks, 3 clicks, something like that, and a Power BI report was generated for her. There's a lot of stuff which, if you give it reasonably well modeled data, I can never remember how you do it, but there's a way of doing it in Power BI service, definitely, where you can drop data in and say, right, have a go at making a report for me, and it'll do it, which is amazing. It's literally doing a lot of the hard work just to give you an idea of, it kind of whets your appetite with, look at this stuff you can do. You can't do it in desktop, as far as I know, but you definitely can in the service, because I did it the other day just to see that I could, because someone told me I could. There's lots of little features in Power BI which you don't know until someone goes, have you seen that? Because it's changing so fast. Yeah, and just on the point of SharePoint, it was it's integrated at that point. And Power Automate, you can make Power Apps really simply from SharePoint, particularly give it a list, and it will make you a 3-page app. So you can then give that app to people on their phones. So your colleagues, your workers, your whoever it is who needs it, and it looks and feels like an actual app on your phone. But what it's actually doing is just interacting with SharePoint lists in the back, and you can embed them in Power BI. It's also entwined. Power Automate, Power Apps, Power Flow. I think Power Automate is Power Flow. Things get renamed as well. Power BI, obviously. Power Query. So whilst Power BI itself is only however old, I've lost track, 6 or 7 years old, the features within it are much older. So they started in Excel and they've been kind of grouped together under Power BI. But it's established. It's not something that's going to go away tomorrow. So if you've got a question of whether I should go for Power BI, it's not going anywhere. Microsoft are piling money into it, which is just amazing to see month after month. Where a few times I've created things, and you have to do a few workarounds because it's not been quite as simple as, or it's not very straightforward. And then you come to it 2 or 3 months later, and it's now available at a click of a button, which it's interesting if you like being having to keep up to date with things. I imagine it's frustrating if you spent 3 weeks doing something they've just replaced with a click of a button. But that's the pace of change is very fast. Andrea, I saw you typing something. Did you have something you wanted to ask, or have I covered it? We covered it. Anybody else want to unmute, ask any questions?
Regarding the Power Apps, we had a session a couple of weeks ago adding a commenting Power App to your Power BI report. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out on our YouTube channel as well. I pasted the links to that into the comments.
Yeah, I think I did catch that one. It was a good session. I just love the amount of stuff you can do, and it's relatively easy. I mean, it's easy saying that when you've been working with this stuff for a while, but it is, it makes sense. A lot of stuff to me just makes sense.
It's intuitive, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I guess we can wrap it up for today.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the questions. And I knew I wasn't going to make it an hour and a half, but we nearly made it an hour.
No, it's not mandatory to do an hour and a half. It's just so that we can make sure that we have enough time if there's something coming up, and sometimes there's a lot of questions. So definitely thank you for the session. I'll just quickly grab the screen again so I can share the slide where you can see the links to the meetup group and the YouTube channel again. And yeah, thanks again, James. Great session. For everybody who missed some part of it, you can also rewatch it. It's going to be up in a couple of days. And thanks a lot, and hope to see you all next week.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.